Hello to niggas and niggas only. This is your boy, Marquise Davon, Keese, This American Negro, whatever you want to call me. Just don't ever call me Mark. Hey. This American Negro is a podcast that aims to bridge academia and the hood through conversations around black culture. And that could go from politics, that can go from pop culture, that can go from social issues, any of the sort. I want to be able to provide that space because I think, wow, I think information should be accessible to everybody. You know, your boy's a little rusty. I haven't been here and recording for a little bit, and I just kind of wanted to kind of give a little bit more background as to why not.
Hey yo, fuego!
But it's really just been trying to balance out grad school, balancing out work, balancing out creativity, balancing out maintaining relationships with everybody. It's been a little bit more difficult to find time to actually just create. And in that, I'm realizing there's so much more um, about creating that I love and that fills me up so much. And when I don't have the opportunity to do it, everything else kind of falls to the wayside. Like, I'm not motivated to do the best at my job. I'm not motivated to talk all the time. I'm not motivated to actually attend to responsibilities because, baby, if you would see my room, it's not where it needs to be right now. Nah, I just cleaned it out yesterday. But I have just been thinking around the things that are serving me, the things that don't serve me, the things that sustain my joy, and remembering that on my birthday I said I want to be able to sustain this joy for as long as possible. And what does that actually look like for me, right? And so for me, I was able to just write down for a little bit just everything that I need to get done and like things that have deadlines, commitments, priorities, because niggas still got jobs. And it's annoying, but this job is a thing that's also sustaining my creative work. It funds my creative work. This is the stuff that I need. This is a community that I've built. I've been doing this for 5 years. It's the thing I've been committed to the longest. And it's been so interesting because as I have been struggling to find that balance again between work and creating and just enjoying life, right? It feels like I've been so inundated with things that I'm obligated to do at work, right? I have to make sure my lesson plans are done. I have to make sure I'm maintaining hella relationships with my students, making sure I show up for them, sometimes doing this annoying Saturday school. But in all of that, I'm also recognizing that now I also have to do grad school because I have to get certified. And getting that certification, it just was like, this thing's not on my time. It's not what I wanted to do in the moment. And because of that, I'm finding myself just becoming Mr. Richards for a long period of time and not actually invested in Marquise for a long period of time. And in that, there's just been a resentment and a frustration and a space of like, do I really want to do this thing? Now, I'm not going to go up and quit. Like, no, that's not my MO at all. But there was a moment in time where I was just like, if I cannot do my creative work, this job is not for me. If I'm not able to find time and not go home tired after dealing with kids and adults and parents and stuff all day, it's not it because it's not sustainable for the thing that genuinely brings me joy. Teaching is very, 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 very close to my purpose, but it's not the thing that I can say gets me up every single morning. It's not the thing that I can say allows me to be my most authentic self. Like, that's the reality. I thrive off of having to live in a space that allows me to just move freely, that does not restrict me, that does not force me to have to play politics with other people. And I'm realizing education forces me to assimilate and compromise so much of the stuff that I don't believe in. You feel me? And in that there are moments, and I was venting on Twitter and just to a couple of friends and whatnot, and everybody's just like, there's a season for everything, and there is gonna be a moment where you don't like having to put certain things on pause and all of this. And I said, honestly, I'm not compromising my creativity anymore. I'm not compromising these things anymore. I've been working since I've been 16. I'm 27 now, and I've never not been without a job. I've never got to have a break. I've never got to indulge in the things that I truly love in its full totality without having to compromise this, because in somebody else's head, something else is much more important. My time is much more valuable somewhere else. My identity is much more valued somewhere else. All of the things that they tell me to do is much more valued somewhere else. But the creative space and how long it's taken me to be able to live in a space where I'm comfortable with self and I didn't have to compromise and I don't have to consistently play somebody else's game, that hits different. And I don't want to compromise that. You know, it's a place where I get to navigate freedom in a way that doesn't feel difficult. It's a place that I get to just be. It's a place where I get to share my thoughts. It's a place where I get to fully live in my purpose. It's all of this space. So it's so interesting, like, having to compromise so many other people's times and knowing that there's expectations and there's all these things that I have to get to. And in some people's minds, it's just like, no, it's not that deep. Like, there's not that many things that are going on. But in reality, there is. Like, I have to maintain a certain GPA in order to graduate and get my certification in this program. I have to still teach these kids because I can't slip, because I only got so much time with them. And it's crucial, especially in the developmental years as a 9th grade teacher. And so there are just things that they can't necessarily be compromised, right? And in all of that, it's just that frustration of like, I need Marquise. I need to fill into Marquise. Who is Marquise? What does this look like at this time? So definitely that check-in was a little bit longer, but I definitely just wanted to explain like that hard part of being a creative that requires me to work this 9 to 5, still sustain my 5 to 9, still find time to sleep, still find time to do this, but also recognizing like this stuff is hard. Like, I'm producing another show. I'm trying to maintain my own content. I throw an event that I had to put off for part of a year because I have classes on the same times I wanted to throw the event. And on top of that, I wanted to expand this to my merch. I wanted to go into partnerships. I wanted to go into sponsorships. And I just feel like because of so much more of my time is going into Mr. Richards and not Marquise Davon, my own brand has been going by to the wayside. And I don't bang with that. I have goals. I have objectives. I have things that I want to reach. Like, I have things where I'm just like, oh, I've been doing this for 5 years. I think I'm now in this space where I can do something more. I want to also just recognize that because this stuff is not easy. It's not just sitting here in front of a camera and setting this thing up and doing this. Like, no, Marquise Davon Productions is a full beast in itself. And I just feel like I haven't been able to nurture it a little bit. And without me nurturing it, it's beginning to make me a lot more short-tempered. It's making me a lot more annoyed. And I don't like being in that space. So I was like, I have to make sure that I maintain myself, and I have to make sure that I don't lose myself in all of this other stuff. Which, honestly, at this point, it brought me to a point where I just needed a reset. And when I tell you, CultureCon couldn't have come at a better time, when I just needed to remind myself of all the good shit that I'm doing, all the good work that I've been doing, and just kind of having that culmination right there to just remind me. Being in a space of other creatives who just simply get it. Being in a space where other people are also grinding and working and building relationships and building their brand and living in their truth and all of that stuff, man, it was so cool. So CultureCon is just a big old conference where many Black media professionals, entertainment people, relationship experts, content creators, everything possible is there. And it is just so dope to see a culmination of content creators being able to go into a space where people are genuinely invested in their work and people are genuinely invested in them and believe in the vision of what we are doing. And that stuff, to be around other Black creatives who are going through similar struggles, other Black creatives who are just trying to figure it out, other Black creatives who are trying to expand, all of that shit matters. And I couldn't stop smiling that day. Now, the food situation was annoying me. But other than the food situation, I had such a wonderful time because sitting there and being able to watch Lena Waithe, being able to watch Tracy Ellis Ross, Elaine Welteroth, Brandon Jinx Jenkins, like, Kendrick Sampson, Megan Good, all talk about their stuff, but also seeing YouTubers, seeing so many people from Philly being able to show up and knowing, like, we are on our stuff and we're just doing something right. It is just taking the rest of the world to have to catch up to knowing that this is a very valued space, right? People, it's hard for people to create, right? We look at it and we're just like, oh, it's oversaturated, it's doing this. But in reality, Culture Con was able to just remind us that as much as we are making it, the creative mind is still important in a space like today. Creativity is what pushes culture. Creativity is what is the best way to figure out where were we at in this point in time? What were we thinking about? What were we talking about? What was challenging for us? All of that stuff is important because creation allows us to see an insight into where we were at 2020. What were people talking about at 2022? What were people trying to do? How much was creativity being invested in? Seeing something like LinkedIn, seeing people from Audible, seeing people from all HBO, Seen in Black, bro, like all of that stuff is it matters because it's not just simply, oh, you have to be an actor to get this thing done. Oh, you have to be here to get this done. Like, no, it's accessible. It's accessible, right? Knowledge sharing is so important, and to be in a space where we get to share so much knowledge and be able to just look at each other and know, like, oh, I'm working on the same thing. I'm doing this too. And here's what I had to do, but here's how I just at least can hold the door open for the next person. Here's at least a bit of advice that I can give you. And that stuff is so important because that is the kind of work that requires us to be able to be transparent and able to build up more opportunities and able to build up a generation that does not have to go through the same things as us, that does not have to work, and only see the value of the work be returned 10 years, 12 years, 15 years into doing this thing. There should be opportunity for us to be like, hey, I see you and let me pull you up from here, right? But CultureCon, overall, this was my first time at CultureCon, and when I tell you, I was just in awe. One, because it felt like a family reunion. There is something that was dope where I was just like, oh, this is Black Twitter, Black YouTubers, Black podcasters, all over in one spot. Who are you? What? And that stuff is so cool to me because I'm just like, there were people who were able to come up to me and was like, yo, I'm such a fan of your work. It's nice to see you, this, that, and the third. And I got to go back and go return the energy. Like, we're genuinely invested in each other's network. We're invested in each other's space. And I'm just like, what would it look like for us to fully, like, invest in that ecosystem with each other? Invest in all of this stuff, bro. Because I'm just like, fans. And everybody's just so nice. The fashions were out of pocket. I said, oh, my gosh. I feel I'm not adequate enough. Now, I definitely dress for comfort. Let's be very clear about that. But still, it was so cool, yo. Like, I hope every creative gets to experience something like this. And there were just a lot of different takeaways that I got to go with as well. Instead of just being in awe and just being like, yo, I can't believe I'm here. It's also like, I deserve to be here. I've been doing this shit for 5 years, right? Seriously, for 5 years. Podcast after podcast, trying out different things, doing a short film, expanding into merch, all of that stuff. So finally being able to be there, some of the stuff that I really took away was one, take up space. Take up space. There's always going to be something that people are going to be like, well, maybe you shouldn't do too much here. Maybe you shouldn't do too much here. But what I noticed was like Lena Waithe was taking up space and making sure that she was accessible and making sure that she was also really, really good at what she did, making sure that she was a great resource, right? So it's super important that we do that. Megan Good talked about the same thing of just not only being an actress, but wanting to go into producing and directing. That stuff is, is so important, right? Because who says we can't take up that kind of space, right? So that kind of stuff was super important to hear. Tracee Ellis Ross really dropped a lot of gems as well, especially in terms of her being a CEO and in terms of her taking space and knowing the importance of having very intentional conversations, right? We do this as podcasters. We do this as cultural commentators. But what does it mean to have a scale that is so much bigger than that, right? Tracee Ellis Ross gets to talk about Black hair and what this means in a modern day perspective. And she gets to do it through the lens of Black women and interviewing Black women. And there's power in documenting all of this stuff, right? And it clicked because I'm just like, I'm such a creative person in that space. I'm just like, I just want to do some world building and I want to create and I want to do this thing. But I'm also like, there's a power in being able to tell our stories. Kendrick Sampson also said a very similar thing. He was just like, no, we need to make sure that our stories are being told. I know people are going to be bothered by hearing these different narratives. I know people are going to be bothered by, oh, I don't want to hear another slave movie. Or I don't want to hear about struggle anymore. I don't want to do da-da-da-da. But in reality, what happens if we stop telling those stories, right? What happens if we're just so jaded that we just want to forget and something gets lost in translation? Because so much of our history has been lost for so long as Black people. And I just feel like Black creatives are quite literally digital what am I trying to say? Not digital architects. What is the word? Digital archivist, right? We get to build this thing out. We get to talk around. They get to go back in 2020 and be like, why, what was going on in this moment? Why was the manosphere a thing? Where did this push on masculinity begin? What were these movement workers doing? What was the ideology of all of this stuff is there. What was art doing at this time? We're sitting there critiquing art. We're in discussion with each other. We're talking about humanity more. This is one of the coolest ages to be in because we get to do all of that kind of work. So it pushed me in my thinking, but it also made me inspired to really just, hey, I'm doing this podcasting thing and I did this for a purpose and I'm reminded of that purpose. Like, my podcast is not for me. Yes, it sustains me and it fills me and it does everything I need to do. But I realized, like, I'm doing good. I'm helping other people. I'm getting people to just figure it out. And it's so exciting that when people come up to me and they're just like, yo, like, you had this episode and it just really made me think a little differently. It pushed me to believe in this thing differently. And so I want us to really start thinking around the value that we have around creatives and making sure that we're not just throwing them to the wayside as like, oh, this thing is a hobby. No, this thing is a full business, right? Those things are important to be able to recognize for those of us who are still in our 9-to-5 jobs. All of this stuff is important when you have family trying to figure out like, oh, what do you do? Like, you just do some fun. You set up a mic and you just start talking. No, this stuff is, yeah, there are some people who just do that because it's fun to do. But the other part of it is there are people who are super intentional about their work. And that's the stuff, that's the pieces that I think are so important for us to really not forget, right? And so CultureCon was a beautiful reminder of that. CultureCon was an opportunity to expand my horizons and who I get to talk to and who I get to meet. Because if we just walked around and just did not meet a new creator at that time of day, then I don't know what was going to happen, right? And honestly, it was Audible who had my favorite activation in there. And again, that's because I'm a conversation ass nigga. But for real, like, Audible had the opportunity to sit down and there's a mic right there. I don't know if it was recorded or not, but you get to sit down, you pick up a prompt, and it's a question, and you talk for 3 minutes, and you just answer the prompt, and you get to know somebody else. And in that, I love that activation because, in particular, I got the opportunity to just meet somebody who is also close to Philly, and I would never have guessed, who has a wonderful platform where he gets to do interviews on the street, who is building this thing up. And we had stories that aligned with each other. We had ideas that aligned with each other. And if we didn't talk for that 6 minutes, I would never have had the opportunity to just know, like, yo, there are more people out here who are talking around the same stuff and have the same mission. And to me, that stuff is wonderful to think about. That stuff is wonderful to really indulge in. So I am just really happy with how they handled everything. Seen in Black, I gotta find a way to work with them. I don't know what I gotta do, but Seen in Black and the Onyx Collective had no business being as dope as they was. For real. Like, it had no business. The Activation Alley was so exciting. They had small Black businesses that were there. There were other brands that were there. And that stuff, bro, that there's no way. Like, I'm looking at that, I'm just like, yo, how can I make a better experience? What can this look like when I throw my own events? And what does it look like for me to be intentional around this stuff, right? But yeah, I looked at all of that and I was just so excited. And I hope that more Black creatives get to experience CultureCon. I hope more Black creatives get to know that they are worthy, that they have this, and that we're all working through it, but we're all working towards this goal, right? And so as I start to finish up on this episode, I really just wanted to, one, just talk around the experience, but two, just express my gratitude for something like CultureCon to be able to exist, because that team put in the work. They made sure that we were taken care of. And honestly, that little VIP section did what it needed to do, because I walked up in there and they said, margarita, and I said, how'd you know I love tequila? And that was just cool, right? I get to sit there and I got to see people that I totally respected, and they were just so nice. And I love that we are in the space now where you don't have to be an asshole to get through. Like, a highlight was being able to meet Dustin Ross from the Friend Zone podcast and just express, one, my gratitude for him, because I've been listening to him for 7 years, and just following his work and just looking at the stuff and the space that he creates and how much he still brings laughter to me once a week. And it's just like, I just wanted to give him his flowers, and that was so dope to be able to see. I got to meet Jabari Banks, who plays Will on Bel Air, and he was super nice. Like, Philly was really present in that room. Everybody from Rec Philly who showed up, it was dope to see them as well. Yeah, and there's just so many other people that were there, and I was just happy, bro. Like, to be in a room of people who get it and who understand who you are at your core, because we all create something from our mind and just put it out into the world for it to be critiqued, for it to be shared, for it to be in conversation with each other, and just knowing like that stuff is important. So make sure that you go check in on your creative friends. Make sure that you are still supporting their work. Make sure that you really, really are invested in what we're doing. Podcast might not be for you, but go watch something. Watching stuff might not be for you, so go listen to somebody's music. Go look at somebody's art. Go buy somebody's clothing. Like, please, 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 please. CultureCon gave me the reset that I needed and reminded me, like, Marquise, you need to keep doing this stuff. Because the amount of people who are just like, I love what you are doing with Black masculinity right now. I love what you have done in the past with politics. I love what you have done with that kind of stuff. Reminds me of like, oh shit, like, people are watching, people are listening, and people need this. And it doesn't have to live in an echo chamber. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode of This American Negro. Remember, make sure to like and subscribe on this page if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening in the audio format, please make sure that you give me a 5-star and leave a comment as to what you'd like. That is how you're able to sit here and support us as creatives. And for right now, I don't have too much on my Patreon right now, but that will be ramping back up. If you are interested in at least supporting me financially, you can go to patreon.com/Marquise Davon. That's MarquiseDavon. And you can do as little as $2 a month, which is $24 a year to support me, or whatever makes you feel comfortable supporting me in that space. You'll start getting updates when I throw my events again. You get discounts on the events and also merch. So again, if you want to support me in that space, I don't have much to give right now, but just know within the new year, you'll be seeing those perks ramp all the way up. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Once again, this is This American Negro. This is your boy, Keith. Peace.